And as you may know, the American Medical Association strongly opposed efforts to socialize medicine, right? Well, the American Dental Association did the same thing. They did not want to see the government getting involved with the provision of dental care, right? It would cut into their monopoly, and fluoridation was an attractive policy for them because it was a way of appearing to do something about tooth decay that didn't challenge this privatized dental care system that was leaving millions of people without any care. So you have the private dental interests that had a stake in this. And then you have, back then, a very significant factor is big industries like the aluminum industry, chemical industry, steel industry, fertilizer industry, which were being besieged by lawsuits on fluoride pollution, communities that were being poisoned from air pollution and water pollution with fluoride. And these industries were very involved in funding research on fluoride, research that, painted a very rosy picture of fluoride being safe at low levels, because these industries had a real interest in demonstrating, like, don't be scared of the fluoride pollution. It's actually good for you, right? So you had a corruption of the science from industry. And I think industry, like the aluminum industry particularly, was promoting the idea of fluoride actually could be good for you at low doses. So I think you have those three main institutional interests at stake in the early days of fluoridation.
Now, how is this fluoride still in our water today? I mean, is it at the municipal water level that there's giant jugs of fluoride that just get every day dumped into the water supply?
Yeah, it's a local or state decision. Some states mandate fluoridation in every community, but most states, it's a local decision. The fluoridation chemicals themselves are shipped. The source of these chemicals is primarily the phosphate fertilizer industry, which is mostly located in Florida. And fluoridation chemicals are basically liquefied air pollution. You have an industry, the phosphate industry, which has had a long-standing problem with fluoride pollution, because when they make the when they process the phosphate ore, it generates a bunch of fluoride gases, which they have to trap in air pollution control equipment called wet scrubbers. And that basically adds a water to these gases, which creates a compound called hydrofluorosilicic acid. Okay, if you dump hydrofluorosilicic acid on cement, it's going to burn a hole right through the cement. It's a very corrosive, toxic waste product of the phosphate industry. What they do is they barrel it up and ship it around the country for water fluoridation. But
and then we drink it. And then we drink it. Oh my God! So yeah, this is how they're able to get away with their pollution, essentially, or the offshoot of their processing. It's like we don't know what to do with this extra stuff. Let's just dump it in the drinking water and have Americans drink it. It's a brilliant strategy.
Yeah, the solution to pollution is dilution, because if they took hydrofluorosilicic acid and they dumped it in a river, that would be unlawful. If you dump it in the ocean, that would be unlawful. There's specific regulations that prohibit the disposal of hydrofluorosilicic acid and fluoride chemicals into the environment. But if you meter it into your water supply at this so-called optimal concentration, then it's a product, it's not a waste, and we pay for it. We actually pay to add this chemical to our water supply, right? I should mention, Clayton, that over the past 15 years or so, we've seen a real uptick in the amount of fluoride chemicals that are coming from China, as opposed to our own phosphate industry here in the US. And there is a lack of transparency and clarity as to what industries are generating those fluoride chemicals, and what, if any, quality control there is on those chemicals. But a lot of communities now are getting their fluoridation chemicals from China.
Oh, amazing. And so again, this water now, so it's in our drinking water. We're cooking with it. We're making pasta with it. We're filling up our kids' water bottles. They're going to school. And at the end of the day, there's no topical benefit because you're not using it on a toothbrush. You're just ingesting it and swallowing it. So we're essentially helping this phosphate industry to dispose of their pollution by giving it to our children in the drinking water.
That's right. I mean, the CDC takes the position that even at the low levels of fluoride that you get in your mouth from drinking fluoridated water, that has a topical benefit. That's the CDC's position. You're swishing your teeth all day long in a low level of fluoride, and that has a topical effect. Okay. But you got to ask yourself, does it make sense, first of all, to add a chemical to the drinking water that doesn't treat the water? Because to be clear, fluoride does not treat the water. Like chlorine treats the water. It kills the bugs. You can drink from your tap and not get sick, right? That's a good thing, okay? With fluoride, you're not treating your water. You're treating the person drinking the water to prevent cavities, okay? So first off, does that make sense? Do we want to do that still? Use the water supply as a vehicle for delivering a medicine or a drug. And then second, does it make sense to add a drug to the water supply that you don't need to swallow? That's topical only, especially when the risks come from swallowing it. So it is I think it's the writing is on the wall. It's pretty clear that this is a backwards policy. It's a relic of kind of Cold War medicine. And most of Europe has already recognized that. Most of Europe has already rejected fluoridation. 98% of Europe does not add fluoride to its water. The US is an outlier there. And that's one of the things that, kind of amuses me and frustrates me with a lot of the media discourse that we see right now after RFK announced his intention to advise against fluoridation is the media acts like that's this crazy idea, whereas most of the Western world has already done it. Like most of Europe has already ended fluoridation, right? But we treat the idea here in the U.S. as if it's a fringe idea, if it's crazy, and I think that is a disservice to the public.
Well, and of course, the criticism of him on that multiple issues, food poisoning. Most of Europe, you're not allowed to have red dye. Compare a Heinz ketchup bottle in Europe to a Heinz ketchup bottle in the United States, and you'll see all sorts of different ingredients in the United States version, high fructose corn syrup, things that are outlawed in Europe. But he's somehow a conspiracy nut for wanting us to not have all of these chemicals that have been outlawed in most of the Western world. It's really, really shocking, and it's unbelievable to watch the Mockingbird media push this. What's your sense of how long it'll take to get this out of our drinking water? I mean, we now know the results. We know the risks associated with this. Very minimal benefits, if any, to our teeth, and all seems to me the risks, the pain associated with arthritis and neurotoxin links to brain development and all of these things far outweighs any kind of benefit to our teeth. How long do you think it'll take for them to remove it nationwide?
Well, the court issued its order on September 24th, ruling that fluoridation presents an unreasonable risk of IQ loss. And since that court's order, we have seen dozens of communities already either end fluoridation or begin the discussion to end fluoridation. So local communities have been taking action. And when RFK came out with his statement in early November, that led to, even more communities taking action. Naples, Florida, which serves 300,000 people, just voted last week to end its fluoridation program. The Florida Surgeon General, Dr. Joe Ladapo, has just advised all Florida communities to end this practice. He's called it a public health. He called it public health mispractice. Public health malpractice to continue fluoridation. So we are seeing action at the local level, but we also the court ordered. And this is an important point. The court ordered the EPA to take action to address the risk. Okay. And so the EPA is now under a court order to begin a rulemaking proceeding. And in this rulemaking proceeding, the EPA has an obligation to do something that will eliminate the risk. So how do you eliminate the risk posed by adding fluoridation chemicals to drinking water? I think the most direct and obvious and only effective way to do that is to ban fluoridation. And the EPA has the authority to do that. The EPA has the authority under the Toxic Substances Control Act to issue a nationwide ban on fluoridation. And that would be if the new administration wants to take real action to protect the public from fluoride, from excess fluoride exposure. The clearest, simplest, most bulletproof way of doing that is have the EPA, under this court order, issue a nationwide ban. And that's what I'm certainly looking for the new administration to do. It has the authority. It's right there. There's no question about it. EPA can ban this practice. And if it does so, the U.S. will follow the path of the vast majority of Europe, which has already done it.
Have you gotten a lot of blowback from the phosphate fertilizer industry? Because what are they going to do? What are they going to do with all this extra fluoride that they've been dumping in our drinking water once this stuff gets banned?
Well, the phosphate fertilizer industry, if it's been involved in anything in the past few months, has hit its tracks pretty well. There's not a sort of public footprint, if you will. But the phosphate fertilizer industry is a notoriously dirty industry, as anyone in Central Florida will know. And what they currently do with their excess waste is just dump it into these, they call them these gypsum stacks, these massive mounds of waste slurry. And the top of these mounds, they have these acidic ponds laden with uranium, radium, arsenic, and a whole range of toxic compounds, including fluoride. So if they can't sell their fluoridation chemicals to water municipalities, the first line of action they will take is just dump more of that fluoridation chemical into their acidic waste water ponds that sit on top of the gypsum stacks.
Oh, God. Well, I was just about to buy a timeshare condo next to a gypsum pond. I'll make sure that I don't do that in the future. Michael, I'll get you out of here on this, which is lawsuits. Now that we know, and there's this connection, and is the government shielded from a massive amount of maybe class action lawsuits or individual lawsuits against whether it's the EPA or CDC or even local municipalities? Like, they've known about this. They've been aware about this, the lowering of IQ in children, arthritis, osteoporosis, all sorts of health problems. Do you anticipate any massive amounts of lawsuits here?
Well, it's always difficult to sue federal officials, okay, in any kind of personal capacity or even institutional capacity for a policy. So I don't see lawsuits against the EPA or CDC for them doing something, to address past wrongs. Okay. But I do think there is a potential for lawsuits against local water municipalities for putting people at risk with this program. So I have not yet I haven't begun any such lawsuits. There's certainly been a lot of inquiries about those kinds of cases. And so I think that that's something you may see in the years ahead, and not only against, the water authority for adding the chemical to water, but also the companies that are selling the chemicals that are being dumped in the water. I think you might see some cases against those companies. Now,